Hi, good morning. Well, I'm on here a little early. Thought that would be a good idea to see if we actually had a good um, Facebook coverage, and we do. So I'm able to stream without any problems this morning. Thank you, Lord. Okay, I'm going to pin this. And how are you all doing? Okay, I'm back. Here I am. It is the 8th of March. It's Saturday morning. And we've been in the book of Zechariah for our devotion, and it's been so good. Yesterday was awesome. Can't wait for today when we see some more messianic prophecy that I always just get thrilled to see how the Bible predicted Jesus' birth and how it was going to happen. I mean, we just read about this just a few chapters ago, how Zechariah prophesied he'd be born in Nazareth and return there. And so and just the whole, today, this whole part about Herod, and it just blows my mind. Anyway, and all the part we read either yesterday or the day before about how he would enter on a donkey rather than a horse. And I love that God is so good to us that he sees to it that we get to see how reliable he is. And when he says something, he keeps his word. Um, that is gold. That just means so much to me to know that he is a reliable God like that. Good morning, Lori. Yesterday I had a fun day. It was my Fridays are my days off, but often Fridays get filled with appointments, medical or something. And yesterday, actually, I was so thankful that I got to have some fun. I'll tell you what I did. After the devotion, a few hours later, I took my sister out, which is good because she doesn't get out very much. And I took her to a Western store and some places we'd never been, in an antique mall, and then we went out to lunch and just had time to talk and to catch up. And it was about 3 or 3.5 hours we got to have together. And then when I came home, it was such a beautiful day that I went in the backyard and laid in the sun because there's something about the sun beating down on my skin that just, I don't know, it's like one of my happy places. I tell you, it must remind me of my childhood. So I laid in the sun for a good 30 minutes, ate my lunch, or no, I had already eaten lunch, so I just laid there and listened to some worship. But then in the evening, again, I got to have fun. Our local Christian college here, Simpson University, was having a couple of baseball games, and we ended up getting over there. They'd already finished the games. We didn't realize they'd be done so quickly, but they had advertised them with a like a tailgate party, so they offered food, which we brought our own food, so we ate in the beautiful weather. And then someone said, well, you can go and watch a volleyball game. There's men's volleyball. So I was with my daughter and a friend. We went over to the volleyball, and that was incredible. They were such good players. And then they had said that at 7 o'clock they were going to shoot off fireworks. Well, that was why we went to see the fireworks. I was so surprised that there weren't more people there to see the fireworks because usually we only see fireworks on the 4th of July. And I thought, wow, this is so incredible, and people don't know. Hopefully, they saw it when they heard it go off. They saw it. I'll have to check my traffic and weather page to see if people said, what's all that booming noise, and figured it out last night. But um, yeah, it was beautiful fireworks. And so I'm just grateful that we got to have some time off yesterday. And after I do this with you this morning, we have a place here called Lima Ranch, and I'm going to go take a walk there with a friend who um, is such an inspiring young woman that I love to hang out with. And it's good just to walk and be outside. I love this weather. It doesn't necessarily stay this beautiful I hope it will. You know, I want it to. I wish the weather would stay like this, and I want to be outside as I can. And I've got my gardening going. Do you guys have gardens? I'm just an amateur gardener. I need to get some more tomato plants. My tomato plants have given up, I think, the last couple years. But I do have other vegetables, either seeds or starts that I've put in. And then I'm really excited that I've planted for my birthday in January. My sister got me about 5 or 6 boxes of bulbs, different various flowers. I got them all in. And then I had this idea in my backyard just to scatter a bunch of flower seeds to see if they'd come up. I didn't plant them, but I've been watering them faithfully in the backyard. I don't know if they'll come up or not, but it would be so pretty if they did. I'd love to get some roses and with also with the tomatoes, but I've not had roses before. And my hydrangea, which is my favorite, I have 2 hydrangea plants in the front yard, and they're just starting to sprout on the the lone twigs, that have been wintered, and now I can see all their sprouts starting. And my peach tree is beautiful. It's very small, but it has all the blossoms on it right now. So that's kind of what's going on. I have all these other trees I'm waiting to see if they're going to do anything from the Arbor Foundation. They sent me 12 tree, I don't know what they're called, treelings or something, where they're just the sticks and they give you explicit instructions how to plant them. So I'm hoping those will take off. And I just have a lot of watering to do. But all that to say is I like getting out in the fresh air. And when it's this kind of weather, I'm just thrilled. And I always walk our little puppy here, our little dog. He's not a puppy, but she's little. I walk her every morning after I talk to you guys. She just likes to go over to the park next to our house. Oh, you don't garden, Amy. Okay. In the shady redwoods, I know. Do you have any sun at all? Can you do any pots, big pots with, I don't know what your situation is. I can imagine though. Yeah, and hit and miss, Lori, I get it. Yeah. But I have a lot of flowers growing out in the front as you enter into my house right now, little pots of flowers that have just kept going. Um, I get I get the biggest thrill out of gardening and out of seeing what can grow. And I'm just not that great at it. I don't think I have the time. It's like a lot of other things that I put my hand to. I don't seem to have the time to really become an expert at it. I still have all this crocheting that I want to learn how to do, and I don't know how to crochet well. I just had one lesson and I did okay, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And then, of course, I told you that a few weeks ago I had my kids over and we got all the tips out that they'd given me for Christmas to try to make flour cupcakes, which actually they did really well with that. But I ended up being the maid that night. Just even Phoebe said to me, Mom, why aren't you sitting down and trying this? And I was more in cleanup mode and provision mode where I was making sure there was enough buttercream frosting and enough food for everyone to eat and keeping the dishes cleaned. And I never sat down and really just tried to make the flowers. See, that's what I mean. I need to make myself. The whole point of this 10-minute talk is that I need to make myself be the one that has fun and not just be the person that provides the fun. Right? um, okay, she's growing flowers, but not food per se. Oh, I get it. Okay, so one more thing before we get started. Usually, when I go through a whole book like this in a devotional, at the very end, I offer time to get on a Zoom call for those of us who have been going through the whole thing. So I wanted to offer that to you, Amy and Lori, and probably to Gail. She's not on yet this morning, but um, I would be happy to do that with all of you to see us, excuse me, face to face and have any conversation we might have after the book so that I can actually hear your feedback or your thoughts and you can get to know each other. It's just like for 40 minutes or an hour, and we could do it at the end of Malachi. I would think that we'd be done with all of this by the end of March for sure. I can give you a better date um, once we get out of Zechariah, and I can see how long it's going to take to get through the book of Malachi. But just a thought, if you want to do that, it's really fun to hop on with everyone that's been consistent and feel like you've been going through a study together. But you only get to see me, so well, be fun to see each other. Okay, so chapter 11, page 408 is where we are today. God will overthrow mighty empires. Open your borders, Lebanon. Let fire consume your cedar trees. Cry in sorrow, Cyprus, for the towering cedar trees have toppled. The high and mighty ones are destroyed. These are my verses. This is an example of why I think it's okay to talk to plants and trees, and I'm not really joking. Um, Cry in sorrow, Cyprus. I don't know, maybe he's actually talking to, well, he says here in the notes, he's talking to towering cedar trees. The oaks and the cypress are all metaphors for the pride and arrogance of the leaders of the empires that failed to come to Israel's aid. Zechariah was dealing with three of the key borderlands of Israel: the northwest, Lebanon, the northeast, Bashan, and the east, the Transjordan. Israel's neighbors showed little solidarity with her as the Assyrians and then the Babylonians came in and ravaged the land. So he's actually, that's what I thought they were going to say, talking about areas rather than the actual trees. But I like to talk to my plants and to trees and to birds and to animals. I'm constantly, if you see me taking walks with Pepper, sometimes a cat will come along with us, and I'm constantly talking to the cat, and they stay with us and keep walking with us. They feel welcome. Anyway, I think there's something to creation groaning for the sons of God. I feel like creation knows a lot about the return of the Lord, waiting for the return of the Lord, waiting for things not to be so heavy on creation, so chaotic in creation. Things off balance is what I'm trying to say. I think that creation has some sort of sensory, something from God that they know his voice, they obey his commands. You know, he says he talks to the waters and the winds and the waves, and these are things that are inanimate objects that we normally as human beings would look at someone like me who talks to these things and says, you're crazy. I don't think so. That's just my whatever for today. Just wanted to throw that in. And I love this scripture that says, cry in sorrow, Cypress, for the towering cedar trees have toppled, the high and mighty ones are destroyed. Wail, oaks of Bashan. He's telling them to cry, for the thick forest has been felled. Listen, it's the sound of the wailing of shepherds. Their glory is gone, their rich pastures destroyed. Listen, it's the sound of the young lions roaring. The thickets of the Jordan have been ravaged. I think what I was trying to get to also is the authority that I know that God's given us as believers to walk in. And I, you know, as an intercessor with these great this great team that I get to work with every week, we do walk the land, and we do speak to the land, and we do speak to crops. We had one place where it was such an amazing thing to watch happen. We walked the land that had been, I guess, is it infertile or infertile, right? Not producing, and it was a very large area that, we walked for a good hour. And then, as we spoke to the land and repented over the land and asked for God's mercy and to remove his judgment on that piece of property, because we had known about the First Nations people, being their blood being shed there. It's all this whole thing. Anyway, you never saw such crops after that. I mean, we all went there a few different weeks and bought food from the land that was growing there, from watermelons to tomatoes, all sorts of things that they planted. And it just flourished. I mean, they had way too much. They couldn't even harvest it all. And really, the public was invited in to, just come in with their baskets, and they'd weigh it and give it to them for a fair price. I loved it so much. It was such the goodness of God. But that's what I'm talking about or alluding to also with speaking to the land. Okay. I don't know what you guys think, but I just wanted to say this sound of wailing of shepherds, their glory being gone, their rich pastures destroyed, and the young lions roaring, the thickets of the Jordan being ravaged. This is really sad what has happened here. They had just destroyed the land. And anyway, I want to read over on page 409 now about what God's going to do. It says the two staffs, that's where we're at now. This is what my God Yahweh says: shepherd the inhabitants of this land, for they're like a flock doomed for the slaughter. Those who buy them slaughter them without remorse, and the merchants who sell them say, blessed be Yahweh, I've become rich. Even the hirelings, their own shepherds, show no pity for the sheep. I will no longer show mercy to the inhabitants of the land, declares Yahweh. Instead, I will cause each one to fall into the clutches of his neighbor and into the clutches of his king. They will devastate the land, and I will not rescue anyone from their power. Zechariah himself, it says in verse 7, here we come up to this verse, is going to become a stand-in shepherd. He says, so I became a shepherd for the sheep, doomed for slaughter, especially for those sheep who had been trafficked. I took two staffs in my hand. One I named affection, and the other I named union, and I cared for the sheep myself. Another way of saying this would be for the words affection, you could say pleasantness, favor, beauty, or mercy. And the word for union, it says the participle Hebrew verb from chobalim derives from the verb chabal, with a sense of to blind someone by a pledge. So in this context, the symbolic name for the second shepherd staff may denote the union of brotherhood. Well, what I want to say here, I want to read verse 8. It says, So I removed 3 shepherds in 1 month, for I ran out of patience with the sheep traffickers, and they hated me. And he's saying here when he ran out of patience that his soul was short. That's what it says in the notes here. I just have to talk a little bit about trafficking here for a moment. Maybe that's just the obvious in these verses, but he's talking about these sheep who had been trafficked. And he says, I became their stand-in shepherd. I became their covering because they were doomed for slaughter. And I know that trafficking is such a huge issue in our modern day. It's something inhumane that we are seeing. I forget the name of that movie where it all came to light. Do you remember the name of the movie I'm trying to think of, with Tim Ballard and his ministry, bringing it all to the forefront of our nation to bring understanding to what's really going on? Um, I, and God is saying here that he ran out of patience with the sheep traffickers, and they hated me. I can't, I know I keep coming back to what's happening in our government right now, but um, we don't really know who is doing all the trafficking. I mean, they do know now, they're catching them, but we don't know the level of hiddenness and the way it's just unthinkable to think who could be subsidizing all of this and for what purpose they would think it would be okay to sell a human being, or especially a child. I can't even understand this, but what I do understand here is that he ran out of patience with them. And I think that, the way that things are going, yeah, sound of freedom, thank you. The way that things are going so quickly here in the government, new administration, that is what I felt like when I read this verse, that our current president has been out of patience with things like this. Let's just talk about trafficking. And so they're moving swiftly, and people are upset. People are hating what is happening and the way that it's happening, because it's this swift movement. And I'm not going to try to say whether or not everything's being handled correctly or well or anything like that, but I do understand that when sin has come to this proportion, and when this many lives, for instance, are being lost in the Ukraine-Russian war, and to want to stop the loss of life, whether it be trafficking or war or something else, or just to attend to those who have been so wrecked by hurricanes or earthquakes or fire, to want to come to their aid now and to do the right thing and not to abandon them. All of these things just remind me of how someone has been sitting waiting for the opportunity to step in and bring in, there's two staffs, union and affection, and begin to put things into order and to find the lost and to care for them as the stand-in shepherd. And then he says, I removed 3 shepherds in 1 month. He removed 3 people or 3 shepherds in 1 month's time. I ran out of patience with the sheep traffickers, and they hated me. I don't know if that resonates with anyone. And I told them, I'm not going to be your shepherd anymore. Those doomed to die can die. Those doomed for destruction can perish, and the rest can devour one another. Again, I keep thinking of the way that it sounds harsh, the way that our current president is speaking, but I feel like it really lines up with what Zechariah is saying here, where he's saying, enough is enough. If you are doomed to die, you can die. If you're doomed for destruction, you can perish. The rest can just devour each other. Like he was saying that about the Russian-Ukraine war. He was like, if you don't want our help, if you don't want to make things um, stop, then we have to leave it to you to figure this out. It's on you, but we do want to help you. And then he said he took his staff affection and he broke it in half to revoke the covenant that he'd made with the whole nation of Israel. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want this staff of affection, of God's affection, to be broken in our midst, that he would be tired of our sin and he would be tired of the human trafficking that he sees in the earth. That's why these people like Tim Ballard and his team and all of the other people who are now trying to secure the border and stop this evil from coming into our country and trafficking these young children that are crossing the border. It's just unthinkable, the way that they've been treated and separated from their families, and the grossness of just stopping and thinking of just selling even one small child makes it just, it's just unthinkable. And he says in verse 11, so it was annulled on that day, and the sheep traffickers who were watching me realized that Yahweh was speaking through me. And then I said to them, if it seems right to you, give me my wages. If not, never mind. Your mind is going to be blown here at how these messianic prophecies come in right at this point. They weighed out his wages. Zechariah's wages were 30 shekels of silver. Does that ring a bell anywhere? Yahweh said to me, now hand your silver over to the treasury, these 30 pieces of silver, this wonderful sum at which they valued me. Mic drop. Can you see it here? These 30 pieces of silver, this wonderful sum at which they valued me. He's talking about himself, God, the Messiah, Jesus. So I took the 30 shekels of silver and handed them over to the treasury in the house of Yahweh. Down in the notes it says 30 shekels of silver was the amount of compensation an ox owner paid to a slave's master, if the owner's ox injured the slave. In effect, this was a statement of devaluing Zechariah and his ministry. And it was ultimately an insult to the Lord, who spoke through Zechariah. Judas himself betrayed or sold Jesus. He sold Jesus. Okay, so that's the first time I've noticed that, even though I've read this before. Sold, like trafficked. Sold another human being. Judas sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. That was what he valued the Lord of hosts, the God of the universe. Zechariah was told to throw his silver to the treasury, or the potter. Judah's silver was used to buy a field from a potter. See Matthew 27. It seems that the 3 shepherds that God removed were the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes in Matthew 16, who had trafficked his sheep. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Today he's raising up shepherds who have his heart and who will use his staffs of grace and union to help and guide his flock. What do you think about that? Isn't that amazing that this 30 pieces of silver he told to put back into the treasury, which was for the potter, and then the 30 pieces of silver that Judas received went to buy a potter's field. Isn't it just undeniable, the correlation between our Messiah, King Jesus, and these scriptures? I just love it so much. Also in verse 13, it says, um, as translated from an emendation of one letter of the Masoretic text, the unamended Hebrew word is smelter or silversmith or potter. And that is where the word treasury is. That's the bringing it to the silversmith or the potter. And then also it says, bring them to the treasury in the house of Yahweh. And the note says, I cast them into the treasury in the house of the Lord. And then it says on the top of page 411, then I broke in half my second staff, union, to symbolize the breaking of brotherly bonds between Judah and Israel. So he broke both staffs, affection break, union break. I mean, this is, I see your comment here, Lori, and there's interesting connection. Yeah. I know talking about politics can, there's so much to think about all that, but I just think God, he showed some rough emotions, I guess I'm trying to say. He was rough. He broke these two staffs. His heart must have been so broken to break the staff of affection and the staff of union. And next Yahweh said to me, once again act the part of a worthless shepherd, and take with you the shepherd's gear, for behold, I'm now raising up a shepherd in the land who will not care about the lost, who will not go in search of the stray, who will not heal the injured, who will not feed the healthy sheep, but instead he will eat the meat of the fattest sheep and even tear off their hooves. The breaking of, in verse 14, the breaking of the staff, the union staff, is the breaking of the brotherly ties of Israel and Judah, and points to the Samaritan schism. Josephus wrote that it was in about the year 328 BC that the Samaritans built their rival temple on Mount Gerizim. The breaking of union would symbolize the outbreak of foreign oppression and the resulting schism between Israel and Judah. And this cruel, heartless shepherd that they're talking about here in verse 16, most scholars, it says, believe that this was Herod that they were talking about. And in verse 17 it says, doom is ahead for the worthless shepherd, that would be Herod, who deserts his flock. May the sword strike his arm, and the arm is symbolic of his strength, and gouge his right eye. A man blinded in his right eye was worthless in battle and unable to stand and fight. That's why he said that. May his arm shrivel completely and his right eye be totally blind. So talk about being rough. Yeah, he just says, may he not be fit for battle ever again. May he not be able to rise up and hurt any more people again. He's wicked. Sometimes we just have to say the truth. Well, that is chapter 11. Next time we get together tomorrow, we'll be in chapter 12. And chapter 12 is about Yahweh rescuing Jerusalem, and then the people mourning. So then chapter 13 and 14 will be on Monday and Tuesday, and we'll have a little break so that I can read the final book and get ready for that. Well, it's 8 o'clock. And for you, Lori, is it 11 a.m.? I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Bye-bye.